Hi, I'm Todd Raffel with SkyHive. SkyHive.ai is our domain name, in case you're watching this video embedded somewhere else. And if you don't know SkyHive, we are a AI technology in the business of reskilling. So we have the world's largest knowledge graph, jobs, pay, skills, and the labor market. And AI is applied to that. And then we take that and large corporations use that as an operating system to get their skills, their technologies all speaking the same skills language, fill the gaps between the skills they have and where they want to be. Governments use SkyHive and schools use SkyHive. Schools, colleges, universities, higher education of many kinds. And that's actually what we're talking about today is schools, higher education, and AI technology, skills technology. And I'm here with Paul Tupan from Ottawa, Canada, right? And if you don't know Paul, he is a longtime consultant and trainer for a variety of educational institutions. He's currently working with La Cité, a school in Canada, French-based. And he's a longtime advocate also of the First Nation communities and immigrant communities as well. So Paul and I are talking about how AI skills technology has been used by schools, and some of the emerging ways that some schools are starting and contemplating and beginning to use it. So some that Paul has done and some that he and I just are aware of other people are beginning to. And we're going to start with what you have done with schools and what you have done with AI technology there. And so Paul, briefly talk about the first thing is what you've done with the French-speaking workforce. And by the way, some of the things we talk about may be Canada-related, US, North America-related, but really, I'd say all of this applies globally. But talk about the French-speaking, what you've done with the French-speaking workforce first, as relates to AI skills technology.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks for that. I think what's important to note, and I will bring context to the francophone reality outside of Quebec and Canada, but I think every time I mention francophone, it could represent theoretically marginalized communities, be it African American communities in the U.S., be it globally wherever there are Indigenous peoples. This could apply. I think what we used it for was essentially to identify, first of all, what were the employment needs of employers who were seeking people who could speak French in their workplace. What were the competencies they were looking for in this, high demand labor market? And how could we help prepare, in particular, new Francophone immigrants to Canada for those jobs, assuming that they had a good portion of the competencies being sought? What were the gaps we could train to? So we started off, our first project goes back pre-COVID, where we hired SkyHive to do a labor market report in the manufacturing sector. President Donald Trump at the time had put a 25% tariff on aluminum and steel products coming from Canada. That sent the industry in Ontario all over the map, including the rural francophone parts of Ontario, which we service. And we had to figure out how to reskill this labor force. And so what was great about the SkyHive application was it allowed us to identify the top competencies being sought for both production and research and manufacturing. And it allowed us to start developing training and reskilling for those people working in that sector to make sure that those manufacturing companies could remain competitive. So it was really, really helpful then. So we saw the precision of SkyHive's predictability was quite frightening. I mean, I wasn't expecting that to be that precise, and it really was. I remember sitting with an advisory committee where they did not see the SkyHive report, and when they identified the 3 top competencies in both areas of production and research, they were bang on. They were identical to what SkyHive had produced in the report. So with confidence, we repurposed, we went back to SkyHive with a second request, and that was to identify the labor market needs for all employers across Canada outside of Quebec who needed Francophone help. And the reason we did that is because one of the other programs we manage at the college is pre-departure services for Francophone immigrants coming to Canada. And so we wanted to see if there was a way of accelerating the match between people coming to Canada and immigrating to Canada in finding employment, and also training them to the skills gaps they might have. So we used it to do a labor market study, which clearly identified the top occupations being sought by employers. And then we managed to identify what competencies we should really focus on that were there was a high gap. It was interesting because of media. Everybody thought, oh, it's going to be healthcare, it's going to be education, it's going to be community services. And those were important. But what we learned through the SkyHive study, which was really true, was it was more in business, finance, and admin was the top gap between the labor market availability and the demand. Same for applied sciences, such as engineering tech, these kind of occupations. And then the last one was management. That there was a huge gap between what was available in the labor market and what was needed by employers. So we managed to develop a Skills for Success program where we developed competency training where there was high levels of gaps. And the take up back in October, which was when we really launched the program, we've had since then over 1,100 participants in about 6 weeks registered. And they're finding the exercises really practical. It's a confirmation of what they knew in their country of origin. And it's helping them get comfortable with what they can present to employers in Canada and better understand what the reality here is in Canada as they seek employment in their areas of interest. So it's a great opportunity for us to help immigrants address a labor market need and obviously increase the competitivity of francophone companies or companies that are going to hire francophones. And make them more competitive in the labor market. So
Nice. You were mentioning you also used AI technology in career centers, in employment centers for La Cité. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so another part of my division, it's a rather large division. We manage about 44 programs and services, and a few of those programs are situated. We actually have off-campus employment centers in an urban, suburban part of Ottawa, and one in the country, in a rural part of Eastern Ontario. And what we did is we wanted to see if it could help employment counselors sit down with job seekers and help them find pathways towards employment and possible training to fill some of the gaps they might have in order to transition into a new career. So we've been experimenting with that. The numbers are small. The initial results are quite positive, especially in our suburban center, because it's in a suburban center where a lot of new immigrants have moved to. And so they're coming in, and it's great because for instance, we have Arab-speaking employment counselors dealing with people coming from the Maghreb region of Northwest Africa who are moving to this area, and they're able to help them and sit down and take a look at what their competencies are and say, hey, yeah, maybe you were a dental hygienist in your country of origin. You know, to become a dental hygienist, you're going to have to do the retraining. You're going to have to do all this. But there might be a job at, say, the Canadian Red Cross or another healthcare organization, and you've got transferable skills and competencies. And maybe that creates an employment opportunity. And in this day and age, I think, one of the big things after people immigrate, say, to Canada or the US, they're trying to find a solid job, something that generates enough revenue to feed the family and pay the rent and the car, et cetera. If they can find something that takes their skills and their knowledge and experience, they're apt to feel more productive, more sense of belonging. And the neat part about the SkyHive application allows us to sort of identify those and help them see and coach them as to where the opportunities are and what they have to do to get those jobs. So that's how we've been using it, in the employment centers. And we're hoping to expand that in the coming years, just to ramp that up and really make that a better opportunity for our clients.
Now let's talk about a couple of things that other schools either are doing with SkyHive, or other schools are contemplating doing and will be starting soon, that you maybe haven't done yet, but you are aware of. And so one of those is how AI technology can be used. AI skills technology, skills intelligence can be used in student recruitment. Talk about that.
Yeah. The toughest part for students is the transition into school and the transition out of school.
Mhm.
And I think SkyHive AI solutions can provide some opportunities in both of those fields. One of the things I've heard one of the other institutions utilize it for is to help recruit students, which would mean if they're going out, say at a fair, career fair or something like that, they would be able to take a student's CV or student's area of interest, make them go through what skills they think they have, and based on their volunteer experience or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. And let's not forget that a lot of our colleges have the average age is around 28 years of age. So many people are bringing already previous work experience as well. But it allows them to go through this exercise of seeing what are their skills and how does that match up with careers that they might be interested in. And then the neat part about the Sky AI platform allows them to identify training programs by which they can pursue. But obviously, we would want them to come to our college because it's the best
Right.
college. So we direct them towards those programs that would be of interest to their career interest and their experience. So that's one facet.
Cool.
The other side is on the back end. There's a lot of student employment services on campus, whether it's part-time jobs, but more so when they come to the end of their diploma or their degree program. How SkyHive can sit down again with a student and say, okay, these are the competencies you acquired in your 4 years or 2 years or 3 years of education. How does that match up with the needs of the market right now, the labor market? And who would be interested in you? And so it sort of allows a self-portrait of a student, a graduating student, to sort of say, hey, here are the skills I have now. Here are the skills that this employer might be interested in, which, okay, what can I do to prepare for that? Can I do some LinkedIn learning? Can I do some additional competency requirements? But how do I get ready for that job so that when the interview comes around, I can say, I'm taking this, this little program to get ready or whatever. So it allows to do some really good coaching from, like I said, from an employment counselor perspective, helping these graduates find employment. So it's similar to what we're doing, obviously, in our two
Right.
employment
centers. Another use.
Yeah.
The development of curriculum and other college programs. Briefly talk to us about that, how AI skills intelligence can be used to build a curriculum, what's trending in the external labor market, what should people be learning? I assume it's that kind of thing is what you're thinking.
Yeah, precisely. And that's the example that we used it for with our Skills for Success program. Although we were short programming, so it wasn't like 2-year, 4-year curriculum, we were able to design training programs that met what the needs were of the Francophone employment labor market. But I think it's an opportunity for anyone, and this isn't restricted to just minority communities. Technology is quickly changing what skill sets our students need. And there's been much written about how colleges are becoming, universities are basically missing the mark in terms of what we're training students for in terms of jobs. I really, really honestly feel that in this very transitory labor market, the usefulness of SkyHive to assess in real time in like 2023 in time right now what the tendencies of labor markets are in terms of transition and what skills need to be brought in enables colleges and universities to modify their curriculum so that they remain relevant, so that when their students graduate, the curriculum that's being taught in those institutions makes them really, really ready for employment and to enter the labor market.
Yeah.
I think since COVID, since the pandemic's kind of withered down, if you will, that's been a really, really difficult thing for post-secondary institutions to remain, but understand what are the changes that are happening in real time and how do they remain relevant. So the nice thing about that is most colleges have their own statisticians. They could delve in there, do labor market analysis with a SkyHive license and try to determine which college programs are relevant, which college programs aren't that relevant, because that's taking students down the wrong path, and then bringing the modification to college programs so that they remain relevant to the labor market needs. So I think it's a critical piece. It's a very useful tool, and I'm not aware of anybody else who's doing that right now.
Yeah, I mean, as a parent who would be potentially spending money for my kids' college, that is critical that it is point and cutting edge and they don't graduate with the wrong skills and knowledge. I feel like we could do this for hours, but let's do one more because
Sure.
there's so many uses of this type of skills intelligence. Let's do one more. For the HR department or the talent department, the workforce department, staffing department of the college or university itself, what about them? How
Well,
could this technology be used?
that's a great question. It comes back again. We talked about changing curriculum, right? So that college programs remain relevant, but does that mean your staff are also remaining relevant?
Mhm.
As the college programs change and integrate, say, you look at the impact of AI overall, not just in what we're talking about, but in robotics and in services overall and marketing especially. Well, we've got marketing programs, we've got engineering tech programs. AI is having a huge impact on all of these. And so how do we know that our staff are able to remain relevant while they're teaching, while they're designing curriculum, while they're following their students in co-op programs, like their day to day? What's neat about this is colleges could, from their HR standpoint, hire in accordance with competencies being sought for their curriculum, but also ensure that college faculty remain relevant to that curriculum, that they're able to teach that curriculum and that they understand. And if there's professional development that has to be done, that they can track that professional development for their faculty or staff who are involved in that. So I think in terms of remaining current, that becomes another opportunity. And you guys see it obviously with the larger corporate community who are using it for those purposes, but nothing prevents colleges from doing the same with their own staff and making sure that they have the professional developments they require to ensure they remain relevant,
Yeah,
that their courses remain relevant, and their students are ready for employment.
no
So,
question. I mean, state universities are the largest employer or among the largest employer in many towns.
yeah.
So not to be ignored. This has been interesting. Paul Tupan, T-O-U-P-I-N, if you want to look him up. And again, he is a educational trainer, a consultant, works with La Cité in Canada, a long time, as I mentioned, advocate of immigrant, First Nation, and underserved communities in Canada and elsewhere. And I'm Todd Raffel with Skyhive. Skyhive.ai is our domain name. And thanks so much for everyone for watching.